Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session on AI at the intersection of climate and health. Climate change can have wide-ranging impacts on people's health around the world, particularly in vulnerable communities. And work that happens in the health space doesn't always make use of climate data that could be useful for predicting health outcomes and proactively developing interventions that could improve those outcomes. At Abt Global, AI has become a major tool that we use to solve problems in both the climate space and the healthcare space. And one thing that we've found is that AI creates opportunities to break down those data silos between climate and health. So today, I'm going to be giving a broad overview of AI, and then my colleague Yuliya will talk about a project where we put that into action, improving maternal health outcomes in Tajikistan. And finally, my colleague Leland will follow up with practical tips for what to consider when you're thinking about using or deploying AI technologies. And throughout this presentation, you are going to see polling questions popping up on the side of the presentation, and we encourage you to answer those as they're popping up, and we'll discuss the results at the end. So let's start with introductions. I think that Nora had an unexpected conflict and might be joining late, so I'll introduce her. She's the data science director at Abt Global, and I'm a data science manager on her team. So the work that both of us do involves working with AI and related data science tools like machine learning. And you'll meet Nora when she joins for the Q&A later. So I will turn it over to Yuliya to introduce herself.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I'm Yuliya, the digital project manager at Abt Global and the digital health specialist for our Tajikistan USAID founded Healthy Mother, Healthy Baby activity. And I will give the floor to my colleague Leland. Thank you.
Thank you all. My name is Leland Smith. I work on Abt's digital and data services team as a strategist and solutions architect. I have a background in data and analytics, almost exclusively in sort of the USAID world over the last few years. Thank you all for having me.
So what is AI? AI is the ability of a computer to learn to perform tasks that normally a human would do, like recognizing patterns and making decisions based on information. In the public sector, we think about AI in two ways. First of all, AI involves the ability to automate to reduce human effort. So a major example of that is generative AI. With Gen AI, you can read and summarize thousands of lines of text, which can streamline labor-intensive work that's traditionally done by humans. Then AI also creates the ability to predict the likelihood of an event using data. And so an example there is identifying the people who are most likely to be rehospitalized after a heart attack. And that's the AI functionality that we'll focus on the most in today's talk, where we'll discuss our experiences using climate data to predict health events affecting pregnant people and newborns. However, all of these fall within the realm of what we consider AI. AI capabilities have really expanded in the last few years, and there are a number of different functionalities that now fall under the AI umbrella. First of all, AI can identify what it sees, and that includes reading text from images, including handwritten text, but it also goes beyond that to include image recognition and facial recognition. For example, that's what allows the phone in your pocket to tag people in your photo albums. AI can also respond to what it hears, interpreting audio data to understand natural speech. So an example there is digital assistants like Alexa or Siri. AI can respond to what you type and analyze written text. And that's something that many of us have seen with generative AI, which has really made this functionality easily accessible to everyone for the last year and a half or so. AI can now move by itself, as we see with self-driving cars, and it can identify patterns in data and use those to make decisions, which is what we're going to talk about with today's example. That said, though, it's important to remember that AI is not a solution for everything. When we talk about the data science lifecycle, the first step is understanding the problem so that we can identify what kind of solution we need to build. An appropriate approach to incorporating AI into your work is going to involve assessing every use case for whether AI is the right tool, because AI is just one tool within the data science toolkit. So you need to make sure that you're selecting the right tool for the right problem. Another important caveat is that AI is not the same thing as human intelligence. There are certainly plenty of examples out there of AI being less smart than a toddler on websites like AIweirdness.com. And that's why artificial intelligence should always be used in combination with human intelligence to guide the tool of AI to make decisions. So AI won't replace your job, but it will almost certainly be augmenting it. Something I've heard said in a few places is that AI won't replace people, but people who use AI will replace people who don't. So why are we talking about AI? First of all, 75% of companies are already using it. And by 2026, we expect that 95% of workers will use Gen AI in various ways. And that's because AI carries a number of advantages. First of all, it allows for democratization of data. Users of AI can draw conclusions from data without having to write their own code. Being able to ask questions of data sets and have intelligent chatbots respond will be a huge advantage for a lot of people. Generative AI will streamline workflows in ways that increase productivity. It will organize information in ways that improve decision-making. And it will continue to do what AI and machine learning have already been doing for us for several decades, which is making a lot of different kinds of work faster and cheaper. Now, generative AI carries both risks and advantages for ethical practice. In terms of risks, data risks are a big part of this. Issues with your training data can cause issues with the AI that you build with that training data. In many cases, we're building AI to mimic how humans make decisions, but to do so faster and cheaper. But humans can be biased decision makers, and so training the model using the decisions that humans have made in the past is going to lead to a model that reflects any biases that were inherent in those decisions. There can also be risks with the model's behavior because the model could diverge from what you wanted it to do in various ways, including breaches of privacy, model hallucinations, or a lack of transparency in the model's decision making. AI can also be used for illegal or unethical purposes, from spreading misinformation to committing fraud, and it can have inadvertent negative impacts like intellectual property violations. So to mitigate those risks, it's important, first of all, to use curated training data and to ensure that you're using the best possible prompts and best possible models. And more broadly, an approach that is going to encompass those solutions and also more is to develop an AI governance strategy for your organization. And a governance strategy is going to be something that can help you formalize ways that you develop, validate, and deploy the model to ensure that everyone adheres to the best practices. And that can include things like avoiding bias in the training data, ensuring appropriate testing, governing who has permission to use the model, structuring output to meet transparency requirements, and a lot more. For example, at Abt, our AI governance strategy ensures model quality by requiring a rigorous verification and validation process for AI tools that we develop. But at the same time, our governance strategy recognizes that the way that we define model accuracy itself needs to be scrutinized. At Abt, we believe equity is the cornerstone of our work. And one risk in AI can be that a model may seem to be working well just because it's effective for the majority group, while it's performing less well for minority groups. So for example, a visual recognition AI might work better for some skin tones than others. So one focus of our governance strategy is ensuring that testing looks at specific subgroups of potential users to ensure equitable outcomes. And with a comprehensive AI governance strategy in place, you can make sure that your organization is using AI in effective, value-aligned ways. Having talked about the ethical risks of AI, though, there are also ethical advantages of AI. If you use AI to generate avatars for things like training videos, that can increase the diversity of the characters that are reflected in these videos. You can use AI to generate unbiased synthetic data for tasks like model training. You can expand data access by allowing people to interact with data through natural language queries. You can use AI for translation, which can have a major impact in terms of overcoming language barriers. AI can be used for data analysis that might identify inequities or address other ethical questions. And we can leverage AI for conscious inclusion, which means building the capacity of local and diverse groups to reap the benefits of AI. So now I'll turn it over to Yuliya to talk about applications of AI in Tajikistan and how we've been applying this.
Thank you so much, Jenna. So let's me set the scene first. So in Tajikistan, climate change endangers Tajik livelihoods and health every day, right now. And Abt Global has made an institutional commitment to address climate change in all its projects. Healthy Mother, Healthy Baby takes climate change personally, and I'll share about the context of Tajikistan and the ways Healthy Mother, Healthy Baby is adapting to climate change, which might be applicable for your maternal and child health and nutrition projects. Tajikistan is one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the Europe and Central Asia region and has relatively low adaptive capacity. It's a beautiful, under-visited country and is my homeland. It is a landlocked mountainous country home to almost half of Central Asia glaciers, which play an important climatic role in retaining water, controlling flows, and regular climate in Central Asia. I'm very proud to mention that Tajikistan's per square kilometers water resources are second to Norway, and the energy sector is almost 96% green, and it uses hydropower. Nevertheless, Tajikistan is still vulnerable to climate change given its dependence on agriculture in hydropower, exposure to droughts and heat stress, and significant risks of floods and mudslides. All those hazards affect the health and well-being of the Tajik people. Especially, it mostly affects women, children, poor communities, and older populations. Digital technology has been widely recognized as a transformative tool, and Healthy Mother, Healthy Baby has developed 5 applications to improve data management, as well as holds regular online trainings on maternal and child health. Digitalization reduced time consumption, paper-based processes, and few intensive travels. And some estimates suggest that digitalization can cut global greenhouse gas emission by 15% through solutions in energy. And digitally transforming the health sector reduced greenhouses gas and creates more resilience to the effect of climate change. And from the beginning, we committed to an ambitious digital strategy, and this has had positive effects to limit travel and paper consumptions. Building upon our commitment to digital transformation and climate resilience, we created predictive climate and health risks for pregnant women in Tajikistan projects. This initiative aimed to leverage digital solutions to address the intersectional challenges of climate change and maternal health. Situated at the nexus of the in-country Healthy Mother, Healthy Baby project team and Abt Global Digital Solutions team and the Tajikistan Hydromet Central, our project sought to pioneer innovative approach to inform community health decisions. This project was not just about data analysis. It represents a paradigm shift in how we approach maternal health in the context of the climate change. And we recognize the urgency of the situation and the need for proactive, evidence-based interventions to safeguard the health and well-being of pregnant women in Tajikistan. This project has three main objectives which were aligned to the three parts of the work which we undertook. We aimed to bring together data sets from two sectors that do not currently share data between Hydrometeorological Agency of Tajikistan and the health programs there. During this data discovery phase, we wanted to answer this question. Does climate have an impact of pregnant women health outcomes in Tajikistan? And if it does, our second objective was to build a predictive model or algorithm which can determine the risks of the individual pregnant woman at her next visit to experience advanced climate-related health outcomes. And lastly, after building the model, our objective was to co-develop a prototype of one of the ways this algorithm might be put into use. Our effort related completely evidence of climate change impact on maternal health outcomes in Tajikistan, particularly in the Hatlan province. And through rigorous analysis, we identified significant 2 and 4 Celsius increase in average temperature over 14 years. And we also found that the weather does indeed have an impact of maternal health outcomes in Tajikistan. A hyper-localized and contextual findings. We were able to find a machine learning model that predicts the risks of 3 maternal health outcomes, inclusive of weather changes. And our preeclampsia model correctly predicts 77% of women who developed it at their next visit. Our anemia model correctly predicts 75% of women who developed it by their next visit with temperature and perception from the previous 90 days. And lastly, our INC attendance model correctly predicts 65% of women who will miss their next scheduled visit. Driven by those findings, we developed machine learning models to predict the risks of adverse climate-related health outcomes among pregnant women. And our models successfully forecasted outcomes such as preeclampsia and anemia with remarkable accuracy, providing valuable insights for proactive intervention. By integrating weather data in our predictive algorithm, we empowered healthcare providers with actionable information to improve maternal health outcomes and mitigate the impact of climate change. The development of those predictive models marked a significant milestone in our project, representing the culmination of months of research, analysis, and collaboration. Despite the promising results, our journey was not without challenges. Limited availability and reliability of climate data posed significant obstacles requiring us to adopt our approach constantly. Additionally, navigating the context landscape of data sharing between sectors and building relationships with government agencies presented ongoing challenges. However, through strategic capacity building effort and commitment to collaboration, we successfully addressed those hurdles and developed a replicable framework for future projects. In conclusion, our project exemplifies the transformative potential of digital technology in addressing pressing global challenges. And now I would like to invite Leland to share more about AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yuliya, especially for the project insight and that example, which I think makes a lot of the possibilities of AI feel really concrete. That it's possible to deliver this kind of actionable data and insights to the people who need them. Health workers, doctors, et cetera. But I'd like to talk a little bit about how other folks can take advantage of AI and what this might entail for your organization. So what do you need to kind of get into AI development? I think there is a sense now that AI is everywhere. Everyone sort of says that they're doing it. It's in the news every single day. And obviously, to a very large degree, this is true. We're all using, ChatGPT. We're, using DALL-E and Siri and Alexa, to sort of augment our work and our personal lives. You can put in a credit card to any number of these services and get a very, sort of serviceable AI tool. But they're limited. There's certainly a limit to what these kinds of, generalized tools can do. They have sort of one model to fit everybody. They're optimized for these broad use cases and not laser focused on, one specific set of outcomes. It's not kind of optimized that way. So how many people are, building, using, customizing these things in a meaningful way? Certainly in the private sector, in places like marketing and sales and things like that, this is the way of the future. This is how things are being done. Within the global development industry, broadly speaking, there's certainly no shortage of ideas and ambitions, but given the size of the bilateral and multilateral development industry, there's certainly a relatively small number of specialized AI projects being undertaken. One of these reasons, I think, is that digital projects are inherently difficult, right? Those of us who spent a lot of time working on technology, in international development, certainly understand that it's highly specialized, it's high impact, but you need, specialized staff, et cetera. And AI is really at the highest end of this learning curve. It can be difficult to take on. But let's jump into some of these considerations. So first, you need a good question. You need a use case, right? And it's not just coming up with something interesting you want to look at. You need to think about some of the practicality and the scope of it, right? You need to understand whether something is practical and achievable. Whether it's the kind of question. Sort of going back to Jenna's preview about what AI is good at. Is it the kind of question, the kind of thing that AI is a good solution for? Do you have the data? And I'll jump into that more in a moment, but just sort of at a high level, could you conceivably get access to the kind of data you would need to solve this? And then you also need an understanding of what you are getting out of this. Again, to throw back a little bit to what Jenna and Yuliya have already talked about, AI models can be inaccurate. Looking at some of Yuliya's outcomes, 70% accurate, like that's fantastic. That would be considered, I think quite good. It's certainly a big leg up on what you might have had before. You're flagging data, you're flagging people for potential follow-up and human outcome, which is an improvement in process. But you can't just take that data and then just act on it, in some sort of automated way. It's, again, it's, as Jenna talked about, it's designed to sort of augment our human capacity, not to replace that. So as you're scoping out your use case, start to think about how these solutions might fit into your work with all of the possibilities, with all of the limits that you have, and how it's, your solution is still human driven. Again, we've seen generative AI can hallucinate. It makes things up if you ask it sometimes some of the simplest questions. So just knowing what those limitations are and how you can potentially mitigate and limit the potential harms there. People and skills. This is a major hurdle. AI is really specialized, and you need the right people to be able to develop and deliver on a solution. High capacity roles like data scientists can be difficult to come by, and not only that, but you're in competition with the private sector, to win that talent to your side. And what you can see in this sort of honeycomb on the right side is some of the roles that a really well-equipped AI-driven organization needs to have in order to run these things. If that looks like a lot, and a lot of that looks like nonsense, do you need all of those? Maybe not, but a lot of those roles that are in there as part of that AI governance package are really crucial, and missing out on some of those key functions is potentially a major risk. And that sort of brings me to this question of stakeholders. So, you as a development organization or a consultancy, may be involved in conceiving of developing this model, but are you going to be the person who owns this model long-term? Maybe not. Could be a ministry, could be a private sector organization, could be a CSO, could be any number of other entities. And making sure that, between you and your other stakeholders, that you're able to fulfill a lot of these roles, and develop the model and maintain it for the long term. And then lastly, what's not on that is subject matter experts, which is also a really crucial item. We, as sort of data people, are not always subject matter experts in the field that we want. So bringing in your climate scientists, your health specialists, your local doctors, Ministry of Health, et cetera, is really, really key. Data. This seems really obvious, and of course it is. As Jenna talked about, your data is the key to your model. Your model is only as good as your data. So if you have bad data, you have a bad model. So thinking of how you can get that data, if you can get that data, I think Yuliya talked about some of the challenges that we face in Tajikistan in just acquiring some of that basic data. And then understanding also, is that data, is it any good? Is it missing data? Are there large gaps? Do you have enough of it going back far enough? Are you covering all the right populations? Are you missing large chunks of data here and there? Is it possible to correct that missing data? Making sure that you have data at the right sort of resolution. When we think about health data, we're of course usually talking about people. So making sure that you're collecting enough data about the right people in the right places. And then climate data, of course, is largely geospatial in nature. And so understanding whether you're talking about kilometers and miles of resolution when you may need something a little bit tighter, those are all considerations to take into account as you are gathering all of your data. And none of that would be possible if you didn't consider an equity lens. As Jenna again was hinting at, if you have bias in your data, you have bias in your model, and it's not always super obvious. There are some well-known cautionary tales about things like, developing AI to read and evaluate CVs, for jobs by removing demographic information with the idea that it would then be more fair by, not favoring privileged groups. But then what they found in the outcome is that the model selected for those privileged groups anyway, by reading deeper into that data and pulling out some of those considerations that may not have been obvious to human eyes. So, making sure that you're evaluating not just the surface level of data equity, but really, really diving deep and understanding how it may affect your outcomes. You also need a plan for deployment. And deployment is, a word that talks about how you take the model you developed and put it out into, onto like a server or out into sort of a space where it can then be accessed by end users through an app, through a chatbot, through their mobile phone, et cetera. So, a proof of concept is great, and you can do that on your laptop. But for a model to live on and be useful, it needs a place to live. It needs that infrastructure. It needs the people to maintain it, and it needs sort of a life cycle management. So a model is, only going to be good for potentially a set period of time. A model dealing with climate, dealing with health, may not be accurate 18 months from now. And so, understanding that as part of that deployment, you need to be continually acquiring more data, evaluating it, validating it, bringing that back into your model, retraining it, making sure that it's updated, and managing that entire life cycle. So this somewhat obtuse graphic on the bottom is showing a little bit about what that might look like, and again, sort of breaking out those roles. And you can see a little bit about how cyclical this is as you continue to manage these models over time. Which brings us back to this keyword of governance. And this idea of governance is what ties all of these things together. it's the people, it's the processes, it's the technology, all sort of fall under this idea of an AI governance center. AI is not one and done. It is something that you have to continually engage in, and making sure that you have the right people, that you have the right operational processes, that you're keeping up to speed with the latest technology and data, are all really, really key. Change management, which is on this sort of hexagon map, is also really crucial, because you have to be also managing your organization to use the data that's coming out of AI, and to sort of be, everybody has to be involved in this sort of AI first culture. And this is something that has to happen at sort of the top organizational level. So having that sort of AI governance center like we maintain here at Abt, as well as on an individual project level, having each person sort of involved in that whole area. And I want to close this out by linking this a little bit back, maybe to Yuliya's project, and how we approached sort of this concept of long-term management, of this. So Abt is really multidisciplinary. We have our data science team, we have our climate scientists, we have our subject matter experts, sort of embedded within our project, locally as well as in our home office. We have our data equity team, our user experience designers, and this whole sort of portfolio of multidisciplinary actors all working together. And what we've tried to do is, take all those people and adapt this data value chain approach, which you may have heard about. It's this sort of idea of, you start with your raw data that you've collected, and you continue to add value to it as you develop AI models and interventions. And we've tried to apply this to climate and health. It's really intimately connected to our user communities and the service providers, like health service providers that we're working with on the ground, hydrometeorological agencies, et cetera. And so this sort of model here is meant to kind of depict how we, start out with that raw data, and in the end are able to work with that whole ecosystem of users, with the hope of at the end, we're able to provide those decision-making applications to lead to a more climate resilient health ecosystem. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Nora Connor, who I think is here now.
Yes, thank you, Leland. And thank you, everybody. So at this point, we have about 18 minutes left in our session. We did want to leave some time for questions. So if folks still have questions that you'd like to put to the panel, please just include those questions in the chat. And while you're doing that, you did have some responses from the poll at the beginning of the session. So I wanted to sort of do a quick review of those poll questions to give everybody in the audience a sense of where different organizations are. So our first question that we asked was, have projects that you are associated with developed any proofs of concept using AI? And we got 10 no responses and 4 yes responses. So about 2/3 of folks have not yet started moving into proofs of concept using AI. We had a similar response to our second question about whether any projects that you're associated with have done any AI deployment. So similarly, about 2/3 of you said, no, we haven't done any AI deployment yet. A smaller number, about 1/3, said that they had. And then in terms of why there hadn't been any AI deployment or proofs of concept, what was the reasoning behind that? Oh, and I can probably share my screen now. I did pull these up into a couple of slides. So let me just see if I can quickly do that. Oh, no, I can't. Okay, I'll read the results. So if the answer was no to any of the previous questions about using AI for proofs of concept or deployment, what was the reasoning? And so there was the biggest reason was just around internal skill sets. So the majority of folks said it was internal skill sets, followed by lack of AI governance, pricing and cost is related to deployment, and then finally just one person saying it was access. So I think it's looking like access to the AI technology is not the hurdle here. It's more related to internal governance, internal processes, internal skill sets. And then finally, are people's companies using generative AI? Do they have formal governance structures in place? Across the board, about 2/3 say, no, we don't have that yet. And then only 1/3 of folks are sort of doing that. So this is clearly going to continue to be an emerging area. I think we're seeing a lot more of this kind of work happening in the private sector. So really interested to sort of see that trickle over into into more international development work. And then next, we do have some questions in the chat. So if it's all right with folks, I'll just sort of start from the top and go through some of the questions and field them appropriately. So I wanted to start with this question for you, Yuliya, about how are beneficiaries responding to this AI implementation in Tajikistan, and how are people in Tajikistan viewing climate as a challenge?
Thank you so much, Nora. So the response to implementing AI among beneficiaries and stakeholders has been largely positive, showcasing optimistic for the potential AI holds in addressing various climate health challenges, in particular, if we will talk about Tajikistan. So, and in Tajikistan, where climate change poses significant threats, local communities increasingly recognize it as a forefront challenge. And with AI assistance, there is a showing hope for innovative solutions to mitigate the impact of climate change and foster sustainable development in the region, especially for pregnant women, if we will talk about our case within Abt Global team. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuliya. All right, so next question. Can we talk a little bit about the informed consent process and how participants were made aware of their data being used with this AI machine learning technology, and how did they feel about it? I don't know, Yuliya, do you want to talk about that? Do you want me to talk a little bit about it too?
Let me start, and if I will not capture everything, so you can speak. So in incorporating patient data for AI model generation is concept purpose is crucial revised to ensure transparency, privacy, and ethical use. So particularly, and participants are fully informed about the project purpose, and they know that which data collection method and potential implications. So they are assured of data privacy measures and their rights regarding data usage and the option to withdraw concept. And collaboration agreements and protocols are responsible data sharing and also addressed. Over. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, Yuliya. It's very important that we have sort of very clear guidelines and governance around how data is used, how it's shared, how it's moved from place to place, so that we're ensuring that data is kept private and secure throughout the life cycle. All right, next question. I'm going to pitch this one to Leland. So the question is from Chris Odell. Obviously, we all need to adapt to AI and keep up with the changing world. Given high barriers to entry that you talked about, are there principles or common factors that make certain products worth it? For example, as we're evaluating opportunities to move to AI-based solutions, when do you see AI being the right solution, and when is it not?
If I had a really good answer to that, I could potentially be a very wealthy person. I mean, I think it's difficult to evaluate. I think one of the things you have to look at is this sort of total cost of ownership approach, right? Being able to sort of plot out, what's potentially the status quo, what might the long-term costs look like for a non-AI sort of maybe traditional approach to solving things, and then what those costs might look like if you are introducing AI. It can be challenging to sort of forecast the long-term cost of AI, I think in some ways, because I'm not going to say it's like super new. There's a lot of people doing this for a long time. But given the nature of some AI cloud services, et cetera, being able to arrive at that forecast can be a challenging and sort of technical job. That said, if you're able to do that, I think you can get that high level idea of what the overall cost of that intervention might be, and then I could certainly see being able to do some sort of economic analysis of what the potential impact of that might be. I think there's also certainly factored in there this idea of opportunity cost as well. What's the opportunity of not keeping up and not sort of shifting into this AI world, which I think is probably even more difficult to capture, but certainly something that a lot of people are tackling right now. And there's definitely the potential to be years or decades behind very quickly, given how quickly this is moving.
So Jenna, I know we've done a lot of AI work more in sort of the domestic space. Could you talk maybe a little bit about sort of the trade-off in sort of deciding when it makes sense to do AI with sort of the state of the data? Where is it in terms of what kind of pieces need to be in place before we tackle a machine learning project or an AI project, and what's the relative sort of work share that goes into the data preparation versus the actual modeling?
Well, I would say that probably the data preparation ends up being the majority of what you do in most cases. When you are putting together your data to prepare to use AI, there needs to be a lot of work in terms of, first of all, identifying what data sources are going to be useful. So some pieces of that might be pretty obvious to you. Some pieces might involve some creativity, like bringing in external data sources, such as in the example we talked today, bringing in climate data to make health predictions. And then there are going to be pieces where you're merging together different data sources. You're going to be evaluating the quality of your data, because as Leland discussed, if you are using bad data, you end up with a bad model. And once you have identified that you're using good quality data, you have to make sure that you're structuring it in the right way that that's going to be usable by your AI. So there are a lot of different steps there before you even get to the piece where you're actually doing modeling.
Yeah, that's a great perspective, Jenna. Thanks for sharing. I'll go to, I think, our last question in the chat currently. So if folks still have lingering questions and want to add them, please feel free. But last question from Weiyan Zhang. Regarding the importance of the data collection in the whole product, do international development companies have bigger advantages in international data collection than many private tech companies that specialize in AI projects? So this is sort of, I think, getting at the data provenance. Who has access to the data that's needed to train those AI models?
That's a fantastic question, and I certainly think that we as sort of Abt Global and the other sort of similar types of organizations in the world are in a unique situation in that we are explicitly for social good and for social impact, and I think that changes the lens through which we approach data collection. So when we are going out and doing a large survey for evaluation purposes, or as part of a health project, if we're working with farmers somewhere, we're collecting that data as a public good and something that's very explicitly for social impact. So I think one major difference there is that if you're a private sector service provider, maybe again maybe you're collecting farm data to sell fertilizer better, et cetera, and that's all wonderful. That's very good. It's very valid. But there's very often then restrictions in how that data is made available. So I think we because we're funded by USAID to a large degree, most of the data, non-sensitive data we're collecting is public. You can go into the development data library and download a lot of these data sets, directly from USAID. And, even if it's not public, there are always ways to negotiate access to those. So I think that, in my mind, is a huge advantage. And I think another way is that we have some leverage very often in acquiring some of those third-party data sets. So getting hydromet data, other things like a hydromet agency may be charging for their data, to distribute it to the private sector at a cost that very often other people, local organizations are not able to bear. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's expensive to collect that data. They should be compensated so they continue operation. But we as sort of development implementers also have some leverage, again, in that we're approaching the situation from a public good perspective, that we can say, hey, look, we're going to deliver this wonderful product. It's going to be AI driven. It's going to use some of your data. Let's figure out some situation where we're able to access and collect some of your data for this tangible social good in a way that a purely private sector company might have a hard time justifying.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Leland. So we have about 5 minutes left. I'm just gonna throw some questions over to Yuliya because, really she's the star of the show here. With the actual implementation, actually bringing these tools into health clinics. I think that's just, it's been a really exciting project for Abt overall. I guess I sort of want to hear, can you share a little bit more about what your experience has been like, doing this project, bringing in like an AI solution to the Healthy Mother, Healthy Baby project? And sort of where do you see that going in the future?
So I hope that our application with all these predictions will be used all over the Tajikistan, because for now it is in use only in one province, in 20 pilot districts. So, and there is really a hope that people can access like everywhere, because Tajikistan is very mountainous and rural country, and there is a lot of people who do not have access to all this information. So, for example, simply for air quality index, so not everyone knows where they can find it. So, and the big hope is that in the future, so it will be accessible to everyone.
Yeah, that's a great point, Yuliya. I think that's, as we were ideating about this, there's been some exciting developments recently with AI, different AI solutions, transformers that can operate offline and just operate on a phone without having to connect to the internet. And so I think, we're really just at the outset here with solutions where, we're moving from a place where, a year and a half ago, nobody was talking about AI, to a world where we can use these tools in different settings, regardless of internet access, and really bring and leverage that technology in the international space. So I think it's really exciting, and it's been a great privilege for Abt to get to work with you and your colleagues in Tajikistan. And I think we have about 3 minutes left. Does anybody have any closing thoughts they want to share?
I just wanted to, I know we had one final slide with our contact information on it. If we could throw that up, that would be great. I just want to close out that I know we sort of talked about a lot of big things, particularly, about a lot of the challenges in implementing AI. And, I don't want that to scare us off. I think it's something, obviously to approach with caution and a great degree of forethought. But here's our email addresses. You can also find us on LinkedIn. And please do reach out. We do this for our job, but we also love talking about it. And so, yeah, please feel free to reach out to discuss anything more.
All right, huge thank you to our panelists, and thank you all for attending, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks to SID for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.